It's funny, isn't it? You find the most fascinating character sometimes in the most, the most seemingly plain place.
Hmm.
Like, take Nantucket.
Yeah.
In Moby Dick, Ishmael describes it as an elbow of sand.
An elbow of sand.
All beach without a background.
I see, I see.
Can you picture that? It's like
Mm.
the place is like almost defined by its emptiness.
Absolutely, yeah. And it really sets up this idea that that whatever greatness Nantucket has, it
Yeah.
doesn't come from like the natural resources of the place,
Yeah.
It comes from the will and the ingenuity of the people who live there.
Right, and it's applied to something totally outside of the island itself.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And it gets even, like, stranger. Like, he describes how they had to, like, plant weeds,
Oh, wow.
and they treat wood splinters like they're museum artifacts.
Wow.
The idea of trying to grow toadstools for shade
Oh my goodness.
and, like, specialized footwear just to walk on all the sand.
That's a
It's such a weirdly specific picture
yeah.
of this community that's, like, so dedicated to this one pursuit.
Right. It speaks to how focused they were on, on whaling. And
Yeah.
as Melville points out, their prominence comes from something they do on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
It's a testament to their to how far they reached
Yeah.
from this tiny little island.
And that sets the stage perfectly for this deep dive. We are diving into Herman Melville's Moby Dick, or The Whale,
Okay.
through this collection of excerpts.
Oh, right.
We also have some really great observations from some historical figures, too, like Una von Troil,
Okay.
Thomas Jefferson, Edmund Burke.
Nice.
And it's all kind of colored by the narrator's really unique perspective.
Right.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to really understand the multifaceted world of whaling and
Yeah.
the deeper questions that Melville's kind of trying to deal with underneath the surface.
Okay. So, one thing to think about as we jump into this
Yeah.
is the climate of the American Renaissance. There was this real drive at the time to create a uniquely American identity.
Yeah.
Distinct from Europe.
Totally. Yeah. You see this like tension, don't you, between like someone like Hawthorne, who's very much rooted in the past, sees history as this shaping force,
Yeah.
versus Melville, who's like exploring this freedom,
Right.
the excitement of it, the anxiety of it, the self unmoored.
Yeah, exactly. And Melville, he actually saw a really a profound democratic dignity in common labor. He thought it came from God.
Wow.
And he said it's the center and circumference of all democracy.
Really interesting.
It's a pretty radical statement, saying that everyone is inherently worthwhile no matter what their job is.
Totally, yeah. Let's get some historical context here.
Okay.
Going back to the late 18th century, you've got Una von Troil describing the sperm whale as active and fierce.
Yeah.
And that it required vast address and boldness from the people who hunted it.
Oh, wow.
So this was not just a fishing trip.
No, not at all. And then you have someone like Thomas Jefferson, who was fascinated by American enterprise.
Mm.
He even wondered if anything could be as important as whaling.
Mm. And then you have Edmund Burke,
Yeah.
who offers this great metaphor.
Okay.
He says that Spain is like a great whale stranded on the shores of Europe.
That's a powerful image.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think he's saying that Spain is like kind of stuck,
Yeah.
not really moving forward, like a whale out of water.
Right, right.
It's a real contrast to the energy of the American whaling industry.
Totally. And he also talks about the English king's right to royal fish, whales, and sturgeon. It was actually a 10th branch of revenue tied to protecting the seas. So it shows how important these creatures were, not just as like part of nature, but also as like economic
Yeah.
and even legal symbols.
It's like they're a resource,
Yeah.
but also a symbol of power and control.
Let's jump right into the world that Melville creates here,
Okay.
starting with the Spouter Inn.
The Spouter Inn.
What a setting. Gable-ended old house,
Sure.
one side palsied, perched on this bleak corner, constantly being hit by the wind. Euroclydon, I think it was called.
Euroclydon, yeah. That's a powerful wind, It comes from the Mediterranean. Often destructive.
So what does that tell you? about the setting.
Well, I think Melville is really trying to establish this idea that the world is a harsh place
Yeah.
and that the people who live in it are vulnerable.
Right.
Even the buildings are kind of precarious.
And then you have that grim observation from the old writer
Okay.
about the wind and how it feels different if you're experiencing it behind glass
Right.
versus through an open window with no glass.
Oh,
Yeah.
death is the only glazier.
It's a reminder that,
Mm-hmm.
even shelter can be kind of fragile in this world.
Yeah, and then the narrator has this thought. These eyes are windows, and this body of mine is the house. He's connecting the outside world to his own internal world.
It's like he's saying that we're all vulnerable.
And then there's old Dives. Nice and cozy inside, romanticizing the weather.
Yeah, it really shows how
Yeah,
how our perspective shapes our experience,
totally. And then we get introduced to the harpooner,
The harpooner?
who's out until Sunday doing, what the narrator sees as this cannibal business,
Really?
Selling heads.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all very strange. And the landlord's just like, he pays regular.
Like in this world,
Yeah.
Money talks.
Money talks. And then a landlord invites him to turn flukes.
Turn flukes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this nice bed that he shares with Sal.
That he shares with Sal.
And their kids fall out of it.
It's just so oddly domestic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's preparing us for how strange Queequeg is.
Right.
But in this kind of funny way.
Right.
And then you have the narrator's sleepless night.
Okay.
He hears these footsteps, sees the light, and then the figure appears with the New Zealand head and a candle.
Oh my gosh. That's,
What an entrance.
what an entrance. So what does he look like?
Well, he's described as this dark, purplish yellow color.
Uh-huh.
And here and there stuck over with large, blackish-looking squares.
Wow.
The narrator thinks they're fight wounds at first,
I see.
but then he realizes they're tattoos.
Hmm.
And it reminds him of this story he had heard about a white whaleman with tattoos.
Okay, so he's starting to,
Yeah.
rethink his initial impression.
And then he has this thought,
Yeah.
that a man can be honest in any sort of skin.
That's a really powerful statement.
Really is.
Hmm.
But he's still confused by Queequeg's complexion. It's like more than just tattoos.
It's like there's something else there.
Yeah. It keeps him kind of
Mysterious.
mysterious. Yeah. Now, you have this funny bit where the narrator's like totally terrified by the idea of staying in bed for 16 hours.
No, right.
He wants his stepmom to give him a good slippering.
That's fun.
Such a weird overreaction to having to rest,
It's like he's so uncomfortable with being still.
But then it gets really scary, right? He wakes up in the dark and feels this supernatural hand
Oh, wow.
clasped in his own.
That's creepy.
It's really frightening. And then Queequeg wakes up.
Uh-huh.
He grunts like a dog, shakes himself, and sits up really stiffly.
Coke.
It's this really striking primal image.
Yeah. He's not like anyone the narrator has met before.
But then Queequeg does this really unexpected thing. He offers to let the narrator dress first.
Oh, that's
He
interesting.
calls it a civilized overture. The narrator is shocked. He says, I began to be sensible of strange feelings.
Right. It's like it's challenging his expectations.
Totally. And then he has this thought about the innate sense of delicacy in savages. But he also admits he's been staring rudely at Queequeg.
Yeah.
It's like a real turning point in his understanding.
Yeah, it is. It's like he's starting to see Queequeg as an individual
Right, right.
and not just some stereotype.
And then they go to New Bedford.
New Bedford.
And there's this stark contrast that Melville draws,
Yeah.
between the wealth of New Bedford with all its patrician-like houses and gardens
Yeah.
and what it might be like without the whaleman.
Yeah.
Desolate like the Labrador coast.
That's a big difference.
It is. And he calls New Bedford dear, expensive,
Yeah.
land of oil, but not in the biblical
And
sense.
then biblical sense.
And he wonders where all this wealth came from.
It's all tied to whaling, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Then you have Queequeg, who's basically forced onto this whaling ship,
Forced.
even though the captain doesn't want him at first. And then we find out that Queequeg is like royalty.
Royalty.
Yeah, the son of a king,
Wow.
sea prince of Wales.
Oh,
And he wants to learn about Christianity so he can help his people.
that's pretty amazing.
Isn't it?
It is.
But then he sees how the sailors behave in Sag Harbor and Nantucket, and he gets disillusioned.
Disillusioned.
Yeah, and he says, "It's a wicked world and all meridians. I'll die a pagan."
Oh, wow.
It's a pretty harsh judgment.
Yeah, it is. He's basically saying that the so-called civilized world is actually pretty corrupt.
Then they arrive in Nantucket,
Nantucket.
and they're told to go to Hosea Hussey's Tripot's Inn,
Okay.
which is known for its chowder.
Chowder, nice.
But the directions they get from the landlord are so confusing.
Oh, no.
All these landmarks and nautical terms.
It's like they're outsiders in this world.
Totally. And they even argue about where this yellow warehouse is.
Oh, right.
But they finally find it after asking for help.
So they're just trying to navigate this new environment.
Yeah. Then we meet Captain Peleg,
Captain Peleg.
who owns the Pequod. And the narrator tells him he wants to go whaling to see what whaling is. "I want to see the world," he says.
It's a pretty basic motivation, you know,
Right.
just wanting to see the world.
But then Peleg asks this really pointed question, "Have ye clapped eye on Captain Ahab?" And the narrator doesn't even know who Ahab is.
Okay, so right away,
Yeah,
we know that Ahab is important.
totally, yeah. Now, there's Captain Bildad,
Captain Bildad.
who's described as an incorrigible old hunks
Okay.
and a bitter, hard taskmaster when he was a sailor.
Right.
His crew came home exhausted, apparently. And for a Quaker, he's pretty hard-hearted.
That's interesting. A Quaker who's hard-hearted.
Right. And his stare is described as drab-colored and really unsettling.
Oh, wow.
It made people want to work frantically.
He sounds intimidating.
And his appearance, very practical, no wasted flesh, just this economical nap on his chin.
Wow.
He's all about efficiency.
He's all about efficiency.
And then we see Bildad reading from a book very quietly, which is real contrast to Peleg's boisterous nature.
Yeah.
And then Peleg shows the narrator the ship's articles, and they talk about his potential share.
His lay, right.
The lay, yeah. Can you explain the lay system?
Yeah, so in whaling, instead of getting paid a salary,
Right.
everyone on the crew got a share of the profits from the voyage. So the more whales they caught,
Yeah.
the more money everyone made.
So the narrator, being new, expects a 275th lay.
Wow, that's a small share.
Yeah, but it's better than nothing.
Right.
And then Peleg and Bildad have this conversation about death. Bildad asked Peleg if he thought about death and the judgment during a typhoon they experienced with Ahab.
Oh, wow.
And Peleg says, "No. No time to think about death then. Life was what Captain Ahab and I was thinking of."
So he's focused on survival,
Yeah.
not on the afterlife.
Right, right. And then there's this weird encounter with Elijah at the wharf. Yeah. He asks him if they're going aboard, and Queequeg tells him to go away.
That's a little creepy.
Yeah, it's a bit ominous. And then they prepare to depart.
Okay.
But Ahab's still not there.
Oh, right. He's still in his cabin.
To his cabin.
Uh-huh.
So it builds up the anticipation
Yeah.
for when he finally appears.
Definitely.
Now, Melville makes this big claim
Okay.
that whaling had a huge global impact. He even says that Australia was given to the enlightened world by the whalemen.
That's a big claim.
It is.
Yeah.
What do you think he means by that?
Well, I think he's pointing out that, you know, whale ships were often the first to explore these far-off places, like
Right.
Australia. They charted the waters, they brought supplies, they made contact with the native people. So in a way that kind of opened up these areas for the rest of the world.
Yeah, yeah. And then he addresses the idea that whaling isn't, very glamorous.
Right.
He says, who wrote the first account of Leviathan? Job. And who wrote the first whaling narrative? Alfred the Great.
He's trying to give whaling some historical weight.
Yeah, he's making it sound epic.
Right.
Then we learned about the crew of the Pequod.
Okay. The crew?
Not many of them were actually American-born.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Melville says that a lot of American industries relied on foreign labor for muscles,
Right.
while Americans provided the brains.
So the crew is really international?
He calls them isolados.
Isolados.
Yeah. Each one living on his own separate continent, but united by this shared purpose.
That's an interesting image.
Yeah. And it's all centered around Ahab.
Ahab is the driving force.
And there's Black Little Pip, too.
Right. His fate seems foreshadowed.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's this funny anecdote about Flask and the live whale.
Oh.
Flask thinks the whale is dead.
Yeah.
So he pokes it with a lance, and the whale whacks him with its tail.
Oh, no.
It's pretty funny. And Flask is so angry, he threatens to kill the whale.
Even though it's already dead.
Yeah, even though it's already dead. And then the old Manx sailor says that Ahab kicked Stubb
Right.
as a sign of respect.
A sign of respect.
Yeah. He compares it to being slapped by a queen in England.
That's a strange kind of respect.
It is.
Yeah.
But it shows how Ahab kind of inspires this weird
Devotion.
yeah. Now, let's talk about whales themselves.
Okay. Whale.
Melville explains that there's a big difference between the tails of land animals and sea creatures. Land animals have vertical tails,
Yeah.
and sea creatures have horizontal tails.
Right.
And he uses that to define what a whale is.
So he's trying to be scientific about it.
Yeah. And then he explains how the sperm whale got its name.
Okay, how to get its name?
Because people were confused about this substance, spermaceti.
Spermaceti.
Yeah, they thought it was something else at first.
Right, so the name stuck.
Even though it wasn't quite accurate.
Interesting.
Then he starts classifying whales.
Okay.
Starting with the right whale.
The right whale.
He calls it the most venerable of the leviathans. The first one to be hunted regularly.
Okay.
He lists all its names. The whale, the Greenland whale, the black whale,
Wow.
and the products it yields. Whalebone and oil.
So it was really important.
Very important. And then there are these brief mentions of the razorback whale and the sulfur bottom whale,
Okay.
which are much less known.
Or more mysterious.
Yeah. Then there's this dramatic scene
Okay.
where Ahab assembles the crew around the capstan,
The capstan.
and he tells the mates and harpooneers to stand around him with their lances.
Oh, wow.
It's like a ceremony.
It is like he's invoking some ancient ritual.
Right. And he gets really impatient with this boy who brings him a mug of beer.
Oh, right.
It's like he's so focused on his mission that he can't be bothered with anything else.
Exactly.
And then he tells the mates to cross their lances.
Cross their lances.
And he grabs the middle of them and shakes them and stares at the mates really intensely.
What are they thinking?
Well, Starbuck looks down. Stubb and Flask look away.
Oh, okay.
They're uncomfortable.
They are. It's like they sense something is wrong.
And then Starbuck has this soliloquy
Oh,
where he says he feels overmanned by Ahab.
Overman, like he's being controlled.
Yeah, like he's powerless to resist. He knows Ahab is mad.
But he still follows him.
Yeah. He says he's tied to Ahab by an unbreakable cable.
Wow.
He hates Ahab, but he also pities him.
He's conflicted.
He is. He sees the lurid woe in Ahab's eyes.
Lurid woe. That's a powerful phrase.
Yeah. It's like he sees the suffering behind the obsession.
Right.
And then the English sailors are talking about Ahab,
Yeah.
and they're really impressed by him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They call him a grand old cove. And they're excited about the whale hunt.
So they don't see what Starbuck sees.
No, they just see a strong leader.
Right.
But then the old Manx sailor starts talking about bad omens.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He says the weather is bad, and the crew is from cursed clay soil. And he sees this mark in the sky.
A mark in the sky.
Yeah, that looks like Ahab's birthmark.
So he's connecting Ahab to fate, to destiny?
Yeah, it's like Ahab is doomed.
Right.
Melville talks about how rumors spread on whaling ships, more so than on land, because of the isolation, the danger, and the superstition.
Makes sense.
It's like their world is full of stories.
Right, stories about whales, about the sea.
And the sperm whale has this prestige.
Prestige, yeah.
It inspires fear and awe, even in experienced whalemen, especially those who haven't hunted sperm whales before.
Right.
They listen to stories about them like kids around a campfire.
It's like the sperm whale is the ultimate challenge.
Right, and there are all these documented cases of whales
Yeah.
being caught in different oceans with harpoons from far away.
Oh, wow.
Like a whale in the Pacific with a harpoon from Greenland.
Really?
Yeah. And sometimes the whales were caught really close together in time, like within a few weeks.
So they travel fast?
Yeah, and they travel far.
Yeah.
The whalemen believed they could go through the Northwest Passage.
That's interesting.
It's like the whales know no boundaries.
Right.
Melville even compares these real events to ancient myths.
He's blurring the lines between reality and legend.
Totally. And then we get this deep dive into the color white.
Okay, white.
It talks about the albatross and how it inspires spiritual wonderment and pale dread. He says this is because of nature itself, not just Coleridge's poem.
Oh, right, right.
And he mentions the white steed of the prairies,
The white steed of the prairies.
another potent symbol of whiteness.
Oh.
So white is this complex color.
Yeah.
It can be pure and innocent,
Yeah.
but also terrifying and empty.
Right. It's like a void.
Melville even asks if its vagueness reflects the heartless immensities of the universe
Wow.
and the thought of annihilation.
That's a heavy thought.
It is. And he says that white is both the absence of color and the foundation of all colors.
Right.
He talks about the dumb blankness, full of meaning, of a snowscape,
Right.
which he calls the all-color of atheism.
All color of atheism. That's interesting.
Yeah. And then he talks about the philosophical idea that all colors are illusions and that white is the underlying truth.
It's like he's using color to talk about, like, the nature of reality.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And of course, Moby Dick
White whale.
is the ultimate symbol of all this.
Right.
So the hunt for him is about more than just catching a whale.
It's about something deeper.
It is. Then he talks about whale migrations.
Okay.
He says that some hunters believe that sperm whales migrate in predictable patterns, like herring or swallows,
Right.
and that you could chart their movements if you had enough data.
So we're trying to make sense of the ocean.
Yeah. They want to find order in the chaos.
Right.
And then he talks about these real-life cases of ships being attacked by whales.
Oh, right.
The Essex, the Union,
Yes, yeah.
and this American sloop of war. It shows how dangerous whaling really was.
Yeah, it does.
It's not just a romantic adventure.
No, it's a fight for survival.
And then we get this glimpse of a whale hunt.
Oh, okay.
It's chaotic. Sailors are jumping into boats. Ahab arrives in his own boat
Right.
with his 5 strangers, including Fedallah, and he orders the other boats to spread out.
So he's taking charge.
Yeah. But the other sailors are watching Fedallah and his crew. It's like they don't trust him.
Right.
They're outsiders.
Outsiders.
And then Captain Bildad makes these pronouncements.
Announcements.
Yeah. He says, corrupt as Lima, and he dismisses Venice.
Menaces.
Yeah. He doesn't have a very positive view of the world.
He sounds pretty judgmental.
He does. And then he talks about the canalers,
Canalers.
the canal workers.
Okay.
He says they could be heroes,
Right.
but they're actually kind of rough.
So they're drawn to whaling.
Yeah. They're looking for adventure or escape.
It's a tough life.
It is. Then Melville talks about how whales were often depicted inaccurately
Inaccurately.
in old books and illustrations,
Oh, right.
like with fantastical spouts
Yeah.
and vertical tails.
Vertical tails.
Which is wrong.
Right.
It's like they didn't really understand whales.
They were going off of limited information.
Totally. He even mentions the title page of The Advancement of Learning, which shows a whale with a vertical tail.
Wow.
And he talks about how tempting it is to include even more monstrous stories.
Yeah.
But he decides not to.
So he's trying to stick to the facts.
Yeah, as much as possible.
Hmm.
He lists the 4 best outlines of the sperm whale.
Okay.
And he says Beale's is the best.
Eels.
But he thinks even parlor men would be skeptical of Beale's drawing of boats attacking a whale.
Right.
And he mentions J. Ross Brown,
Yeah.
who had good contours but bad engraving.
So he's evaluating the scientific accuracy of these depictions?
Yeah, yeah. And then he reflects on the dangers of the sea, the beauty of sharks, the universal
It's
cannibalism.
universal cannibalism.
And he compares it all to the human soul.
Oh.
He says our souls are like this peaceful island, Tahiti, surrounded by these horrors we don't understand.
Right.
And he warns, push not off from,